All right, so we talked about erosion and weathering. Weathering is where they break down the materials of rocks and stuff like that. Erosion is where those materials get moved, but they can't just keep moving. The wind doesn't always blow, even though it feels like it does. Sometimes it does stop, and rivers can carry a stone, but eventually that stone has to be dropped off. So let's talk about that a little bit. That is called deposition, or it deposits something, it drops it off. So here's where the weathering occurs. It can break down different materials, then it moves through erosion and it gets dropped off with deposition. And let's talk about sediments really quick. Sediments is a very important vocabulary word when we talk about landforms and stuff like that. So a sediment is basically any broken down piece of material of earth. So you can have it in the shape of a rock, you can have it in the shape of a stone or a pebble, you can have it in soil form, sand, you can have it in seashells or glass or any types of any types of things like that. And it doesn't just have to be handheld. You can have a boulder, and that boulder is sediment. And that sediment moves through erosion, and then it eventually gets dropped off or deposited through deposition. A meander is a really good example of that. It's kind of like a river, but it has horseshoes all over the place. And if you can see on these outer edges where it's really light, there is deposition. That's shores. Those sediments are being dropped off. But where it's dark, that is where the erosion is occurring. So basically, the water moves really fast on the outside, and that fast water picks up all the sediments off of the cliff. And it's really slow on the inside, so it drops off those sediments on the inside until eventually it builds a sandbar. And that's kind of where we get beaches and stuff like that by rivers and some oceans and stuff like that. So let's watch how this kind of occurs. This is a cool video from the Ukulele River, 1884. Watch how the deposition moves, turns into land, and the river gradually builds its way out. Okay. And deposition can also occur with oceans or lakes or rivers with wind and with waves. So the waves basically can hit the shoreline. It has a lot of power and strength and motion as it hits, and it can move sediments all over the place in different areas. And it can cause crazy landforms like this headland here. It basically erodes away the middle and deposits the sediment elsewhere. It can make the stones sharp, or it can make them really smooth. And in North Dakota, we're really used to deposition through wind. So the wind picks up that sediment or the snow, and that's why we always tell you not to eat snow, because there is sediment in snow. There's always some kind of soil or dirt or whatever you don't want to be eating and putting in your mouth, and it'll move it away. Eventually, once that snow melts, you will see sediment where that snowdrift used to be. And in deserts, there are sand dunes where they have crazy waves across them, and that's because of the erosion and thus the deposition of the wind. It blows it and it deposits it in this wave form. And in oceans and rivers, sandbars can be created. If you've gone to Bismarck, the wind or the moving water can deposit that sand and create a little beach or a sandbar, and they're really kind of cool. And last but not least, floods can be a dangerous form of deposition. You usually don't want to build a house, or you want homeowners insurance if you have your house in a floodplain, because that water can deposit all kinds of materials and sediments and stuff all over the place, and that can cause a lot of issues with the water too, and the soil if you get oil, gas, different things like that in it. So yeah, make sure you're aware where the floodplain is if you are building a house. And that is deposition. So that's the last in our unit of landforms and earth, and we'll just keep moving on next week.